Hello everyone, I am back. We had a technical glitch. I'm telling you, I was as it was happening, I was telling people about what a crazy technology day it has been. Just weird things happening on my phone, happening on my computer. So I don't know if Mercury's in retrograde or getting ready to go into retrograde, but it sure is in my house. So it's so good to have you here on Love Chat with the Love Twins. And so thanks for joining us again on take two of this. And we've got a really great topic. I mean, it really is a very important topic, and it's something that we hear over and over again with our clients. So we want to make sure we address that. Let me just get Michelle, see if I can bring Michelle on. Sorry, do you see my finger? Hold on a second. Michelle, see if you can request to come on, because it's not allowing me to add you as it usually does. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started because we are a couple minutes late because of the technological craziness. But today's topic is, what do you do when it feels like you're doing everything in the relationship, like everything in the relationship, and your partner's not doing anything in the relationship? So needless to say, that creates a lot of stress. It creates, even worse than stress, resentment, which completely impacts the for sure it impacts the relationship. And so we want to make sure that we help you with that. I'm still trying to get Michelle on. I really want her on because she was sharing with me some great stuff about this. Michelle, I don't know, maybe if you get off and you get back on again and request to come on, or I can request you. So what do you do? So the first thing is, before, just to lay the foundation for this conversation, when you're in a relationship and you're feeling like you're doing everything, you probably are doing more than you need to be doing. And notice how I intentionally did not use the word should, right? Because we highly, highly recommend avoiding shoulding all over yourself and your partner. So what does that mean, or what does that look like? Well, if you are feeling like you're doing everything and there's very little happening on the other end, you first of all want to look to see, is it true? Is it true that I'm overgiving, that I am, stepping in, that I'm the one solving all the problems, finding all the solutions, making all the plans? Ladies, you're out there. So what are some of the things that you've had the experience that you have been kind of carrying the load in the relationship? For some of you, it's financial. For some, where you keep, and we're going to talk about this. I really hope Michelle gets back on. We're going to talk about, what do you do when you keep attracting men who are getting themselves together or getting back on their feet? That's what it is. Or, in the midst of a life transition. And look, everybody goes through that. All of us have been in a moment of transition in our lives. But when something happens more than 2 times, meaning 3 or more times, you want to start looking at the pattern, because the pattern is going to make a huge difference in your life. When you identify the pattern, that's just the first step. But then when you dismantle and get to the source of, why is this pattern showing up in my life, and then being able to replace those behaviors, that's where transformation takes place. So what do you do when this is happening in your relationship? First step is to assess. Just step back and look to see, am I overextending, over giving, over providing, over nurturing? Look, being loving, giving, generous, all of those things are great. But when you're doing it to the point, what do I mean by over? To the point of exhaustion, to the point of where you're neglecting your self-care, your happiness, your level of peace and joy, your level of, satisfaction in the relationship. When that's happening, then you want to take a look at and see, okay, what can I do to change this? Because obviously complaining and criticizing and making your partner wrong, which, by the way, are all the things that I did that really almost cost me my marriage. So this topic is more than just a topic for Love Chat with the Love Twins. This is honestly what I saw in my relationship, and I was feeling overexhausted, underappreciated, really very, very resentful of my husband. Hey, Michelle, you know, all of those things were happening. They were happening in my marriage, and I really felt like I was not in a partnership. There's a lot of noise coming through the so I felt like I was not in a partnership, and inside of that I was truly, there was so much resentment and anger. Like my husband almost couldn't say or do anything without me making a snide comment about how little he helped me. Like really, it was not a good time in our marriage. But I also had to take a moment and see what role was I playing in this whole dynamic, because this wasn't happening by phenomenon. It wasn't a mystery. You know, there were certain things that I was doing. So Michelle was telling them that we were talking today about how this is something that's coming up in several of our clients' lives, and why we felt it was important. But I don't have to go that far, because I remember, and I know that you remember from your first marriage, how lonely and what's the word, like you really do feel alone. You don't feel like you're in a partnership, and the resentment, and for me the like bitterness, it was just like it was bubbling. I was just waiting for the moment that I could say something to him that would let him know how unhappy I was, and it just wasn't a good place to be. So what did you want, what was it that you wanted to share today around this topic? Because I said, you know, one of the first steps is let's look to see where my, you know, where am I playing a role. And I really was taking over everything because I didn't want to do it again. I didn't want to have to do it right. You know, honestly, there wasn't a whole lot of trust. But share a little bit about what you were telling me today before the love chat.
Yeah. So, like you said, this has come up in several conversations, and so the first thing is assessing what role am I playing here. A lot of times, it looks like it's happening to us, and so in the clients that I've spoken to, and today's what, Wednesday, and I've already had this conversation with 3 different clients. It's that they're feeling like, particularly with 2 that have children, that they're taking everything on, that they're the ones doing everything and their partner's not doing anything, and they don't feel supported when they are, for example, disciplining the kids. And here's what I had conversations with them about, and what 3 out of 3 discovered. 3 out of 3 discovered that there was a context that they were already coming from. So what's the context? It's the way that you're already looking at something, the way you're already relating to something. And that context is, I'm on my own. Like, I've got to do this. If I don't do it, it's not going to get done. I have to do everything, because if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. So what that does is exactly what you were saying before. It takes that feeling of a partnership, and there isn't one. Like, there's no team, there's no partnership. So what starts to happen is you're operating in silos. And so then when you're having conversations about the kids or whatever, you've already decided what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. Yeah. And the person on the other side is going, well, what if I have something to say about it? Now, here's the trick. If you have the conversation separately, which the other thing that they found in common is nobody's having check-ins, and we'll talk about what check-ins is, until there's a problem. So when the problem is coming out, it's in front of the kids. So then they start, what was the word one of them used? Like countering what I say in front of the kids. And then they start having that big-eyed conversation, like, no, this is what we're doing. And then
that you think your kids like, don't notice.
And so that's what we uncovered, is that because they're already, I'm the only one that can do this, I've got to do this, they're just not even asking for the help that they need, whether it has to do with the kids, or it has to do with the house, or it has to do with anything. And so what all of them saw was missing was trust, vulnerability, and partnership. Those 3 things. So I was just wanting to share that with our viewers, because for it to show up in 3 days, 3 different times, from 3 different women who don't even know each other, We believe in the rule of threes.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see something happen 3 times, we say there's something going on here. So I know from your experience, I've experienced it, and it's a very detrimental way to be in a relationship, is operating like you're two separate people having two separate experiences in the same relationship.
Absolutely. And one of like you said, we're going to talk about check-ins, and one of the things I would recommend highly is you don't want to have these conversations, like Michelle said, in the moment. It's always best to talk about it when there's a moment of peace. Now here's the thing, you're not strategically looking for the moments, right, to have the conversation that tells him everything he's doing wrong and not doing right in the relationship. That's not what it is. We'll talk about the structure of a check-in, but the intention behind the check-in is that we've created agreements, and agreements is not one person comes up with rules and the other person sits there and nods their head at agreement. That's not what an agreement is. An agreement is, and I just had a really wonderful, oh my God, coaching call. Completely lost my
That thing we do all day long.
because it was a conversation with my client and her boyfriend, right? And we were talking about agreements, and started the conversation with each of them expressing their needs. And I, and I was facilitating, because what you want to say is, here's what I need. It's not what I need you to do. It's here's what I need, right? And we were even having that conversation in the Keeping the Love Alive group, where someone was saying, he was helping, he was doing all these things, and now he's not. But he told me to tell him when I need his help. And I'm like, look, a good guy's gonna tell you what you want to hear, right? And it's not that he's a liar. He's letting you know, look, if you need help, rather than complaining that I'm not helping, let me know when you need help. And there were agreements that were made at that time that the situation has shifted, right? So there was actually, it's come up, you're right, it's like 6 times, because now I'm thinking of another partnership where they were saving for a house. So there were some agreements while we're saving for the house, but now they're in the house, so the circumstances have changed. So sometimes agreements change with the circumstances. But here's what it doesn't sound like: I need you to vacuum, I need you to do this, I need you to to wash the dishes before you go to sit down to watch TV, because this is me. This is everything I used to say, by the way. Because I cannot relax and watch TV when I know that there's dishes in the sink. So that's not an agreement. That's a cleverly disguised command. That's a cleverly disguised complaint. And so an agreement sounds like, I would like to, I would like help with some of the chores in the house. And the other person might say, what are some of the chores? And so some of the things that I in my life, these are agreements that Rick and I have, that I don't like to do. I don't like to cook. I don't like to cook. The only meal in the entire world that I like to cook is breakfast on Saturdays and Sundays. That's it. Outside of that, I just don't like it. So he's been cooking.
So unless everybody wants to have pancakes, eggs, and bacon for every meal.
For every meal. And my kids, for some reason, don't understand the luxury that like the deliciousness of having eggs and bacon for dinner. So that's an agreement. And then an agreement that we used to have, this is to show you how things have changed, was when I cooked, he would do the dishes. Well, he's cooking now, so I do the dishes. And then he's such an amazing husband that sometimes I fall asleep on the couch, and when I wake up, the dishes are done and the kids' lunches are done. And this is the same man that I would have fights, like really ugly fights with, about, I don't feel supported, you're so selfish, all you do is watch TV and play video games, and here I am, I have 3 full-time jobs, I'm a mom and I'm a housekeeper, and like those really inspiring, I don't know what I thought what inspiration was going to come from those conversations. But those are not agreements. Agreements are, here are the things that, let's say maybe you have, it's not always chores, it could be bills, it could be different things. Here are the things that I know I need help with, and then you create the agreements together. So what's another thing, Michelle, if you want to talk about, because I don't want to run out of time without being able to talk about what the check-in conversation would look like.
So, like we were saying before, a lot of people don't sit down and have conversations. This is what we found through all the years that we've been coaching women is don't have conversations about how we're feeling in the relationship, what we're grateful about, what any concerns that we have. They show up in the moment of an argument. So, and then what happens is everything comes out, like every complaint, every problem comes out. So what a check-in is, it's one time during the week where you and your boyfriend, your partner sit together and you just talk about, you know, what's going on. It could be what's going on in your life, maybe what you're stressed about, how you're feeling about things. It could be that you had a conversation the week before about something that wasn't working and now you're checking back in to see how you're both feeling about it. Could be that you made an agreement and now we're both having a conversation about it. So checking in your relationship, it's like you wouldn't just, and if you do, you figure out problems show up, drive your car for years and years and years and years without ever checking with a tune-up to see how it's doing. So this is something that Arnie and I practice every week. We do it, and it could be even sometimes it's just like something we're excited about. Like we're doing a check-in. We were going to do it tonight, but now we're going to do it on Friday about a trip we're taking for the holidays. You know, who's going to do what when it comes to getting the Uber to the airport, the checking the bags, the tickets. It's a new airline. Neither one of us has ever flown it, and they've got a lot of restrictions. So partnering together to make that experience one where we're both excited and we both feel supported. So that's what a check-in is. It's not a long conversation. It doesn't have to be, we need to talk. Like you want to see a man completely look like this, we need to talk. There's no reason to have the we need to talk conversation, because if you're checking in every week, then you're just talking about whatever is coming up. So it's really simple. I mean, our check-ins, sometimes they last 15 minutes. Sometimes we're talking for an hour, and it's not heavy or dramatic. It's just, you know, us sharing with one another what's going on. And if I do have something that I need to say that's not working for me, I can say it then before it gets to the point that I'm so upset that now we're having an argument about it. So if you're finding that you're arguing about things a lot, then check-ins are a way to resolve that. Ariana says she has them over breakfast at least 3 times a week. Excellent. Excellent.
That's right. And just one thing that I want to say, because this is what, when I was talking about the couple that I was having the conversation with, and I said, you know, you also want to set an intention for the conversation. So if you set an intention for the conversation, where the intention of this conversation is for us to, like you said, to really make, notice the difference. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do it. So the intention of this conversation is to say who's going to do what's going to get done, you know, so that we can have fun on our trip to Tennessee. Or it could be, you know, the intention of this conversation is to plan our trip so that it is fun, exciting, and a memory we'll never forget. There's a very different energy. So let's say that things aren't going so well, right? And maybe the communication in your relationship hasn't been 100% positive. You can say the intention of this conversation is to create agreements so that we can have more fun, more peace, and more time together. That's the energy behind the intention, and it's not manipulative. You're not saying it so that he will start to help you. It's really like on the other side of this, when we've had this conversation, we're both gonna feel closer, in partnership, and then you also have to be willing to listen, because everything that you need, your partner may have different needs, and that came up in that conversation I was having with a couple. There's a certain thing that she needs, something that 2 things that she said almost contradicted each other. Now, when you don't have a coach, you say that in a conversation and the other person's left feeling confused. So I stepped in and I said, okay, let me just say 2 of the things that you said. And I outlined the first one, and then I said the second one. I said, do you see how if you want this, it's going to impact the other thing that you said that you needed? And I could see it in, you know, we're doing a Zoom call. So I could see he was like, I know how I can say yes to both of these things. And then when he shared his needs, we were able to find a way to, um, what's the word? Not really revise, but to create the agreement that created a win-win. And if you're going into a conversation with creating a win-win, that you have set yourself up for success. Because the moment it's I'm gonna get everything I want, and and there's that energy, and we get it. Look, everybody who's watching this, and if you know somebody who needs today's talk, please just go ahead and press that share button that's on the screen, because this could save a marriage. When I tell you how close Rick and I were, how close we were to ending these, I could not take another week of 3 or 4 days of fighting. I couldn't take it anymore. And we had started fighting in front of our son. And to me, because of the childhood that Michelle and I had, once it started being okay to have those arguments in front of our son, I knew that we were crossing a line. We were crossing a line that was going to be very, very difficult to come back from. And in my head, that meant divorce, to be honest. And I was like, well, I know I don't want to be divorced, but I'm not going down this rabbit hole. So if you know somebody that this conversation will make a difference for, just go ahead and hit share it on your wall, or share it with them Messenger, because it really could. I'm testament to it. It could save a marriage and create. I mean, I'm married to the same man. We're the same marriage. We're even living in the same house, and we have the same chores, and we have one extra kid, and it's a completely different marriage. Completely different marriage.
Absolutely. So these are, we've been talking a lot about being single. We wanted to bring something in about, relationships. And even if you're single, you're not in a relationship, Arnie and I started having our check-ins and created our agreements. We created some of our agreements the first day we became an official couple. When we started dating committedly, just about, because he needed space. Like, one of the things that kept him a bachelor for 35 years was he liked his space. He liked when he did things and having that freedom. I'm like, I have no intention of being with you 24/7. I like my space too. So we talked about that, how often we would see each other. And then we started getting more into communication, and we had been friends for a while. So we understood each other's communication as friends, but that didn't necessarily mean that was going to translate to being in communication as partners now. So that ability to understand, I'm not the only one in this. When you're moving from a me to a we, whether you've been a we for a year, a month, or 19 years, like Gladys and Rick, there are agreements that get created, agreements that get revised, and understanding that you're not the only one that has needs is so important. When I was talking to two of the ladies that I spoke to today, what they really saw at the end of it was they were looking at everything only from their perspective, and that they hadn't really given their husbands and boyfriends an opportunity to step in with anything, because they were just being told what to do. And so by stepping back and going, here's what I need help with, this, and this, which do you want to help me with, is such a game changer. And men want to make us happy anyway. They just want to feel like they have a voice in making us happy when they're doing it. So.
And look, most of the things that you need help with, you don't want to do it either. So don't expect them to be like, cheerleading that, yay, I get to take out the garbage, or I get to, fold the clothes. Most of that stuff, right, is stuff that you don't want to do either. So be understanding about that. Really be understanding. And maybe there's two ideas that came up with Michelle. So if you can jot them down so we have them. One is really talking about the rules of engagement for any conversation, because I think that'll be helpful to those of you who are even dating. There's rules of engagement, and that doesn't mean that you're writing a list of rules that he has to follow. It's how do we speak to each other? How do we agree to speak to each other? How do we agree not to speak to each other? What happens if voices start to go up? It really creates a structure for win-win. And then the other one just left, something that you said was, one of the things that I didn't realize when all of this stuff was happening was that I wasn't giving Rick an opportunity to do anything, because if he would do it, I would correct it, I would criticize it, I would, thank him, and then in the same breath say thank you, but next time, da 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 da. And when he finally shared with me in a conversation, his experience was it didn't matter what he did, I was not going to be happy. So that whole thing about not being pleasable, it was a hard pill for me to swallow, because I was so bitter, and I was only looking at all the things he wasn't doing. I wasn't looking at all the things that I was doing to make him feel inadequate, incompetent, incapable of making me happy. Once I had that understanding, and it wasn't immediate, I did have to do my heart work to like let go of the triggers and forgive him, forgive myself, and all of that. Um, then it was when things began to shift for us. So we have lots of topics for communication. We want to talk to you all about what you want to hear about. So please, in the comments below, in private messenger, email, if you're on our email list, it's easy to just reply to one of the emails that we send you. Please send us your questions. We want this to be valuable for you. If you have a friend that's driving you crazy with questions and you don't know how to help her, send us the question. We'll be happy to help you answer it. But we want these to be really meaningful and purposeful for you, so that you can start creating the kinds of relationships and having the kind of communication. Communication is so essential to the success of any relationship. So send us your questions. We promise to answer them. I think we got one. Oh, that was a good one. This is what we're going to end on. So do you see the question?
What if you create that contract, but he still doesn't do his part? I cook, he does the dishes. Do I just leave the dishes until he does them? Yep. That's the agreement.
So do I just leave the dishes dirty until he does them? Yes.
Yep. Yes. I remember Arnie one time, I was like, but you said you were going to do the dishes. And he said, yes, it's just not going to be in the 3.2 seconds that you want me to do the dishes. I'm like, oh. Is it going to be in the 3.2 hours? But sometimes I see them there and I'm like, I'm not going to do them. The ceiling's not going to fall if the dishes are there, because I'm more committed to not having to do the dishes than to have the dishes in the sink. So, it's, right. And we could talk more about that in another session about choosing what it is you're going to push for. Yeah. Not push for, but what it is you're going to stand for, because if everything becomes a critical issue, it took 2 weeks. So
girl,
in the agreement part of it, when you're having the conversation about the agreement, you could also talk about, well, how long is too long? Like, what's the agreement on how long that's going to be? And then you can avoid the 2 weeks of dishes.
And, but like Michelle said, we do have to wrap up today. We have to wrap up today's, but let me tell you, sometimes it's going to take 2 weeks. And here's the thing, because we have trained our men that if they don't do it, we'll do it. And we have to be responsible for that. It's why he doesn't pay the bills sometimes, or a lot of those complaints. So as a takeaway from this love chat, really look to see, not in a blameful way, what are the things that I do that keep this pattern in place? What are the things that I do? Because then I can stop doing them. But that doesn't mean you get to be resentful and hateful. And we're gonna probably do a part 2 to this tomorrow.
I was just thinking that. I was like, this is a lot to cover in just one Facebook Live.
Let's talk tomorrow about rules of engagement, and then also about how what you can do, the ways that you can, because it does take something. It does take something to not come in and like as you said, totally to take responsibility for that, right? So we'll talk more tomorrow. We'll have part 2, and that way we can give you some really good. She said, "Please do." We can give you some of the tips that we use in our own relationships and that we highly recommend to our clients to shift that dynamic, because we don't want to be in a partnership where it doesn't feel like a partnership. It feels very lonely, and it's not what we signed up for.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. We will talk to you tomorrow. Send those questions in. You see how they spark like 20,000 other things that we could talk about, and we get very excited because we know that we're serving you. All right. So have a great rest of the evening, and until our hearts meet again,
always remember that you are loved.
Always. There's a little glitch. All right, everybody. We love you. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.